My name is Elena Martinez. I'm 35 years old, and for most of my life, I believed that love meant making yourself smaller so others could shine brighter. I'm a graphic designer, successful by most measures, with a client list I've built through years of 60-hour weeks and relentless dedication. But success in my career never translated to value in my family. I was always the responsible one, the stable one, the daughter who didn't need attention or celebration. My younger sister Natalie was the star, the investment, the one whose dreams mattered more than mine ever could. Today, I'm standing outside the Grand Meridian Hotel on what should be one of the happiest days in my family's life. But I wasn't invited. I'm holding an envelope that contains something far more significant than a wedding gift. And I'm about to do something that terrifies me and liberates me in equal measure. I'm about to stop being invisible. This is the story of how I got here. The late afternoon sun reflected off the glass doors of the Grand Meridian Hotel, nearly blinding me as I stood on the entrance steps. Through those doors, I could see the elegant reception setup: crystal chandeliers, white orchids cascading from tall centerpieces, round tables draped in champagne-colored linens. 200 guests milled about in expensive suits and designer dresses, champagne glasses in hand, celebrating my sister's wedding. My entire extended family was in there. Everyone except me. My phone buzzed in my clutch. I already knew who it was before I looked. Mom, you weren't invited. Don't make a scene. This day isn't about you. I stared at those words on my screen, feeling that familiar knot in my stomach. The one that had lived there since childhood. The one that appeared every time I dared to want something for myself. But this time, something was different. This time, my hands weren't shaking from fear or guilt. They were steady, purposeful. I held an envelope in my other hand. Not a wedding gift. Something far more important. Inside was a certified document, a detailed accounting of 15 years of financial support I'd given my family. $127,000. Itemized, documented, proven. They didn't know I had this. They didn't know I'd been keeping records for the past 3 months. Ever since the day my sister told me I wasn't good enough to attend her wedding. The wedding I'd funded with my dreams. Security approached me, a young man in a black suit with an earpiece. Miss, do you have an invitation? I'm the bride's sister, I said calmly. He checked his tablet, scrolling through the guest list. His expression shifted to confusion. I'm sorry, but you're not on the list. I can't let you in without authorization. Of course I wasn't on the list. 6 months ago, my sister Natalie had met me at a coffee shop and explained, as if she were doing me a favor, that the family had decided it would be better if I didn't attend. I wasn't polished enough. I didn't fit the aesthetic they were creating. Marcus's family, the groom's family, was very accomplished, very prominent. My presence would be awkward. I'd given them $45,000 for this wedding, my entire down payment savings, the money I'd spent 3 years accumulating so I could finally buy a home of my own. And they'd used it to fund a celebration I wasn't allowed to attend because I was an embarrassment. I have documentation proving I contributed financially to this wedding, I said to the security guard. My voice was calm, almost businesslike. I have every right to be here. He looked uncertain. I'll need to check with the coordinator. You do that. As he walked away, speaking into his radio, I looked back through those glass doors. I could see my parents greeting guests near the entrance to the ballroom. My mother wore an emerald green dress that probably cost $3,000. I recognized the designer. My father stood beside her in a tailored suit, looking distinguished and proud. And there, in the center of it all, was Natalie in her wedding gown. Beautiful, glowing, the perfect bride at the perfect wedding. And the wedding that wouldn't have been possible without my money. My phone buzzed again. Mom. Elena, I'm serious. Leave now, or I'm calling the police. I typed back slowly, deliberately. Call them. I have documentation of my financial contribution to this event. Let's see how that conversation goes. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again, then nothing. I thought about the past 6 months, how I'd watched my family prepare for this wedding on social media. My mother posting photos of flower arrangements and menu tastings, Natalie sharing dress fittings and venue tours. All the moments I should have been part of but wasn't. How they'd continued having Sunday dinners where they discussed wedding details as if my exclusion was perfectly normal, perfectly reasonable. How no one ever mentioned the $45,000 I'd transferred. Not once. How, 2 weeks after I gave them that money, they told me I wasn't invited to planning meetings because we have a professional coordinator handling everything. How, 1 month after that, the formal invitations went out to everyone except me. The security guard returned with a wedding coordinator, a woman in her 40s with a clipboard and an expression of professional concern. Miss Martinez, I'm Sarah, the event coordinator. There seems to be some confusion. No confusion, I said. I'm the bride's sister. I funded a significant portion of this wedding, and I'm here to attend. She glanced at her clipboard. I don't have you on the guest list. I'm the family specifically. The family specifically took my money and then decided I wasn't good enough to be seen with. But I'm here anyway. You can let me in, or we can have this conversation in front of all those guests. I gestured toward the glass doors where people were starting to notice the commotion. Sarah's eyes widened slightly. She understood immediately. A scene at the entrance would be far worse than letting me stay. If you'll wait until after the ceremony concludes, she said carefully, you can enter with the reception guests. Will that be acceptable? I nodded. I didn't want to disrupt the ceremony anyway. I wanted witnesses. I wanted the reception, where Marcus's prominent family would be watching, where all the guests who'd come to celebrate this perfect image would be present. My friend is also coming, I added. Rachel Chen. She'll arrive shortly. Sarah made a note. I'll inform security. As she walked away, I stood there on those steps, feeling the evening breeze pick up, watching the sun sink lower toward the horizon. Inside, through those glass doors, the ceremony was beginning. I could see guests taking their seats, my sister walking down an aisle lined with white roses. I'd spent 35 years making myself smaller, so my family could feel bigger. 35 years believing that if I just achieved enough, sacrificed enough, proved my worth enough, they'd finally see me as valuable. They never did. They never would. But today, that ended. Today, I stopped being invisible. To understand how I ended up on those steps, you need to understand where it all began. You need to see how a confident, hopeful little girl learned to measure her worth by how little space she took up. I was 10 years old the first time I realized I was different from my sister in a way that mattered more than age. We grew up in a comfortable suburb, in a house with a manicured lawn and a 2-car garage. My father was a corporate executive at a pharmaceutical company, successful enough to afford private schools and family vacations, though he was rarely home. My mother had been a beauty queen in her youth, second runner-up in a state pageant, and she'd built a lifestyle blog in her 40s that had a modest following. She posted about entertaining, fashion, maintaining appearances. Everything was about image. I was born first. For 3 years, I was the only child, the center of attention. I don't remember much from that time. But there are photos. Me as a toddler, my parents smiling, holding me, looking genuinely happy. Then Natalie arrived, and everything shifted in ways I was too young to understand, but old enough to feel. Natalie was objectively beautiful in the way society values. Blonde hair that fell in natural waves, bright blue eyes, delicate features. She looked like our mother, who looked like the beauty queen she'd been. I took after our father's side. Darker hair, darker eyes, features that were pleasant but not striking. My mother used to say I had an interesting face, which I learned was code for not conventionally attractive. But it wasn't just appearance, it was temperament. Natalie was effortlessly charming, social, the kind of child who could walk into a room and make adults smile. I was studious, quiet, more comfortable with books than people. I loved art, drawing, painting, creating things with my hands. I'd spend hours absorbed in projects, entire worlds existing in my sketchbooks. My parents didn't know what to do with me. I remember the regional art competition when I was 12. I'd spent weeks on a mixed media piece about ocean conservation, a combination of painting and sculpture using recycled materials. My art teacher had been so enthusiastic when she submitted it that I'd actually let myself hope my parents would be proud. When they announced the winners at the Regional Arts Center, my name was called for first place in my age category. I walked onto that small stage, accepted the ribbon and certificate, and looked out at the audience for my parents. They were there, my mother checking her phone, my father leaning over to whisper something to her. They clapped politely when prompted, but their attention was already elsewhere. I ran home with that ribbon, burst through the front door, calling for them. Mom, Dad, I won! First place! They were in the backyard. My mother sat in a lawn chair, sewing rhinestones onto a costume. Natalie, 9 years old, practiced poses nearby. They were preparing for a children's beauty pageant the following weekend. That's wonderful, sweetheart, my mother said, glancing up briefly at my ribbon. First place, you said? Very nice. Natalie, straighten your shoulders. You're slouching again. My father was grilling, spatula in hand. He patted my head absently as I showed him the certificate. Proud of you, Elena. You've always been good at that art stuff. Then, to my sister. Natalie, show me that wave you've been practicing. The one for the talent portion. I stood there holding my ribbon, watching my parents devote their full attention to Natalie's pageant prep. That night at dinner, I tried again. I put the ribbon on the table, the certificate beside my plate. My father was mid-conversation. We're thinking long-term for you, Nat. If you do well in these regional pageants, we can start looking at the national circuit. There's real potential here. Modeling, maybe acting. You have marketability. Marketability. That was my mother's favorite word. Natalie had it. I didn't. What about me? I asked quietly. What's my potential? My parents looked at me as if I'd asked a strange question. You're very capable, Elena, my mother said, returning to her meal. You'll do well at whatever you choose. You're the type who doesn't need much guidance. It wasn't the same. Even at 12, I could hear the difference. Natalie would do something great. I would do well enough. Natalie required investment, attention, resources. I required nothing because I could handle myself. The pattern continued through my teenage years, so subtle that if you weren't living it, you might not notice. Family photos where I was positioned in the back or at the edge, sometimes cropped out entirely in the versions my mother posted online. Natalie was always centered, always featured, always the focal point. Relatives at gatherings would spend 5 minutes asking me polite questions about school. Still getting good grades? That's nice. Then spend 45 minutes discussing Natalie's latest modeling job or audition or whatever venture she was pursuing. My achievements were noted. Hers were celebrated. When I was 15, I won a state-level writing scholarship. Full tuition to any in-state university. It was a huge achievement. Only 3 students in the state received it that year. I remember sitting at the dinner table, heart pounding as I shared the news. That's excellent, Elena, my father said. Very practical. You've always been good at taking care of yourself. Then, almost in the same breath to Natalie. Your mother and I have been thinking about your college plans. We want you to explore the Arts College in Vermont, the one with the strong theater program, small classes, lots of individual attention. We think you'd thrive there. Natalie wasn't even remotely interested in theater. She'd already dropped out of 3 different high school activities. But the assumption was clear. She needed the expensive private college to find herself. I had it covered with scholarships and self-sufficiency. I developed coping mechanisms. I threw myself into achievement, believing that if I just excelled enough, proved myself extraordinary enough, they'd see me the way they saw Natalie. I became editor of the school newspaper, graduated with honors, built an impressive portfolio of artwork and design projects. Every achievement was a bid for attention, for validation, for proof that I mattered too. But I was building sandcastles against a tide that would never stop. I chose graphic design for college, something creative that matched my talents, but also practical, respectable, likely to lead to employment. My mother approved in her distant way. Design is useful. There's always work for that. When acceptance letters came, I'd gotten into several good schools, but I enrolled in State University because my scholarship covered it completely. My parents contributed $500 toward books and called it support. 3 months later, they announced they were sending Natalie to Ashford Arts College, a private school in Vermont with tuition of $45,000 a year. Natalie hadn't even finished her applications when they made the decision. She was 17, had barely passing grades, and no clear direction. But she had potential. She had marketability. Your father and I are investing in Natalie's future, my mother explained when I asked about the financial disparity. She needs more support to find her path. You've always been self-sufficient, Elena. We know you'll be fine on your own. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask why self-sufficiency meant I deserved nothing while Natalie's constant floundering deserved everything. But I didn't. I was the good daughter, the one who understood, the one who didn't make waves. I packed my belongings into my 15-year-old car, the one I'd bought myself with money from a summer job, and drove to State University. I moved into a dorm room the size of a closet. I worked 2 part-time jobs while carrying a full course load. I ate ramen and peanut butter sandwiches because that's what I could afford. And I told myself it was fine. I was building character. I was learning resilience. I'd appreciate my success more because I'd worked for every piece of it. Meanwhile, Natalie posted photos on social media from her spacious dorm suite, from study abroad trips to Paris, from exclusive networking dinners with visiting artists. Her life looked like a movie about privilege. Mine looked like a documentary about survival. But I told myself the lie I'd been telling since I was 10 years old. If I just achieved enough, if I just proved myself valuable enough, they'd eventually see me. I was wrong. My 20s were when the pattern became impossible to ignore, when subtle favoritism hardened into something undeniable. After college, I started freelancing as a graphic designer. I worked from my tiny apartment, a studio in a neighborhood that was up and coming, which meant affordable but occasionally sketchy. I spent 18 hours a day building my business, reaching out to potential clients, taking jobs that barely paid to build my portfolio. I learned web design, branding, marketing. I made myself valuable in every way I could. By the time I was 25, I had steady work, real clients with decent budgets. I'd built a reputation for reliability and creativity. I wasn't rich, but I was making it work. I was proud of what I'd built from nothing. Natalie, meanwhile, was on her 4th major life direction. She dropped out of Ashford Arts College after 2 years. Theater wasn't her passion anymore. She'd tried modeling, booking a few minor jobs, but nothing significant. She'd moved back home, rent-free, while exploring her options. Every few months, a new dream. Interior design, fashion blogging, event planning, photography. Each venture received our parents' enthusiastic support and financial backing. Each venture failed within months. I remember calling my parents after I'd signed my first major client, a mid-sized tech company that wanted a complete brand overhaul. It was a six-figure contract, the kind of deal that would establish my business as legitimate. Mom, guess what? I could hear the excitement in my own voice, the hope that this time they'd be impressed. I landed the Anderson Tech account. It's huge. This is the kind of client that changes everything. That's wonderful, dear. Her tone was pleasant but distant. Your sister is thinking about opening a boutique. We're helping her look at retail spaces. It's very exciting. She has such an eye for fashion. My achievement became a transition to Natalie's plans. Again. Did you hear what I said? I pressed. This is a really big deal for my business. I heard you, Elena, and I said it's wonderful. You're doing so well on your own. Then, away from the phone. Natalie, come look at this listing. It has that exposed brick you love. I ended the call and sat in my cramped studio apartment, staring at the contract that should have felt like victory. But it felt hollow, empty, because the people whose opinion I still stupidly craved didn't care. Family gatherings became exercises in endurance. Every few months, we'd meet for Sunday dinner at my parents' house, a tradition my mother insisted on maintaining for appearances. The conversation followed a predictable pattern. Relatives would arrive, greet everyone. Someone would turn to me. Elena, how's the design business? It's going really well. That's great. And Natalie, tell us about this boutique you're opening. Your mother's been telling everyone. How exciting. And the conversation would shift, the attention flowing naturally to my sister like water finding the path of least resistance. They'd discuss her vision, her aesthetic, her Instagram following. They'd ask detailed questions, offer advice, express enthusiasm. My business success was a checkbox to be acknowledged. Her theoretical ventures were fascinating mysteries to be explored. When I was 27, I learned exactly how much my parents had invested in Natalie's various failures. We were at a family dinner. Cousins, aunts, uncles, the whole extended family. My uncle had asked about finances, retirement planning, something mundane. My father had had 2 glasses of wine, just enough to be unguarded. We've put about $200,000 into Natalie's ventures over the last 6 years, he said, almost proudly. Not every investment pays off immediately, but we believe in her potential. $200,000 in 6 years, for businesses that had all failed, for educational programs she'd never completed, for opportunities that led nowhere. I'd been surviving on ramen and peanut butter sandwiches while they spent $200,000 on my sister's perpetual finding herself journey. Later that evening, as I helped clean up, I mentioned to my father that I was thinking about expanding my business, hiring an assistant, maybe renting proper office space. Would you consider investing? I asked. Even just $10,000 to help with startup costs? He looked at me as if I'd said something strange. Elena, you're doing fine on your own. You don't need us. Natalie needs more support to find her path. That's just how it is. Some people need more help than others. Some people. Not his daughters. Some people. As if we were strangers being compared. Not his children who deserved equal consideration. I've needed help, I said quietly. I've needed help for years. I've just never asked because I knew the answer. He patted my shoulder. You're strong, Elena. Always have been. Your sister needs more guidance. You understand. I did understand. I understood that my strength made me invisible. My self-sufficiency made me forgettable. My success meant I didn't deserve investment because I'd achieved it anyway. Have you ever been punished for being capable? That's what it felt like. Every time I succeeded despite their neglect, I proved I didn't need them. And proving I didn't need them meant I'd never receive what I desperately wanted, for them to choose to support me anyway. At 28, I watched my parents buy Natalie a condo. A stability gift, they called it. She'd been living at home for 6 years, contributing nothing to rent or expenses, burning through their money with failed ventures. And they rewarded her with a 2-bedroom condo in a nice neighborhood. I was still in my studio apartment, still driving a 7-year-old car, still working 60-hour weeks to save money that disappeared into business expenses and basic survival. When I asked, carefully, quietly, why Natalie got a condo while I was still renting, my mother said, "Natalie needs stability to build her confidence. You're already established, Elena. You'll buy your own place when you're ready." I wanted to scream that I'd been ready, that I'd been saving. That stability wasn't something only Natalie deserved. But I didn't. I was the good daughter, the one who understood, the one who didn't make waves or demands or trouble. The emotional complexity was that I genuinely loved Natalie. She wasn't cruel or deliberately hurtful. She was thoughtlessly privileged, genuinely unaware of the disparity because it was normal to her. She'd grown up being told she was special, important, deserving of investment. She believed it the way you believe the sky is blue. It was just reality. She'd call me sometimes, asking to borrow money. Just 500 until mom and dad's check clears. Or, can you cover my car payment this month? I'm a little short. She never paid me back. But she'd ask again a few months later, genuinely confused when I hesitated. Once, when I was 29, she called upset about a failed business venture. "I don't understand why nothing works out for me," she cried. "I try so hard and it always falls apart." I wanted to tell her that trying hard wasn't the same as actually working, that having everything handed to you meant you never learned to value it. But I didn't. I comforted her, told her the right thing would come along, played my role as the supportive older sister. When I was 30, my parents hosted a dinner to celebrate Natalie's 30th birthday. A huge party, rented event space, catered meal, live music. They'd invited 60 people. When my 30th birthday had come 2 years earlier, we'd had dinner at a chain restaurant. Just family. And my mother had brought a grocery store cake. I sat at that elaborate party watching my parents toast Natalie, calling her their pride and joy, their beautiful girl who'd find her calling someday. I looked around at the hundreds of dollars spent on decorations and entertainment, and I felt something crack inside me. Not break. Not yet. But crack. A fracture line running through the foundation of belief I'd built my life on. The belief that achievement would earn their love, that success would make me visible, that if I just kept trying, kept proving myself, kept being good enough, they'd eventually see my worth. That night, driving home to my studio apartment in my aging car, I realized a painful truth. They would never see me the way they saw Natalie. It wasn't about what I achieved or how I proved myself. And they'd decided long ago who deserved investment and who didn't. Who mattered more and who mattered less. I was 30 years old and I was still waiting for my parents to love me the way they loved my sister. I would spend 5 more years waiting before I finally understood. They never would. The financial exploitation began so gradually that I didn't recognize it as exploitation at all. It felt like family, like obligation, like what good daughters do when their family needs help. I was 30 years old when my mother first asked for money. I remember the call clearly. It was a Thursday evening. I was working late on a client project, and her voice had that tone. The one that meant she wanted something. "Elena, sweetheart, I need a small favor. I'm a bit short this month. The house renovations ran over budget. Could you loan me $800? Just until your father's bonus comes through." $800 was my grocery budget for 6 weeks. It was the payment on my business insurance. It was the small cushion I'd been trying to build in my savings account. "I'll pay you back on the first," she promised. "I just need a little help bridging the gap." I transferred the money that evening. I never saw it again. When I gently mentioned it 6 weeks later, my mother looked confused. "Oh, did I not pay you back?" "I thought I did." "Well, it's all family money anyway, dear. Don't be petty about it." 3 months later, Natalie called. She sounded excited, breathless. "I have this amazing opportunity, Elena, a business course that teaches all the skills I need to finally make my ventures work. It's only $4,000, but Mom and Dad are tapped out from the renovations. Could you help me out? I'll pay you back with interest when my next business takes off." $4,000 was a quarter of my savings. Everything I'd managed to set aside over months of working evenings and weekends, of skipping meals out, of denying myself every small luxury. But she was my sister, and she sounded so hopeful, and she promised to pay me back with interest. The business course ended after 2 weeks. Natalie decided it wasn't the right fit. The money was gone. When I asked about repayment 6 months later, she looked genuinely surprised. "I thought that was a gift. You know, family helping family." Then my father called with what he termed a family emergency. One of Natalie's ventures had left her $15,000 in debt. Creditors were calling, and it was affecting the family reputation. People in their social circle were asking questions. They needed help to make this go away quietly. "We're not asking, Elena, we're borrowing. We'll pay you back within the year. We just need help right now to protect the family name." I gave him $15,000. It was everything I'd saved. Every extra shift I'd worked, every vacation I'd skipped, every dream I'd deferred. Gone in a single transfer to protect my sister from consequences of her own making. They never paid it back. When I mentioned it a year later, my father acted offended. "We've supported you your whole life, Elena. Now we're asking for support back." That's how family works. And that became the pattern, the cycle that would repeat for 5 years, draining me financially while they continued investing in Natalie's failures. My mother needed $2,000 for unexpected medical bills, cosmetic procedures, I later discovered, not covered by insurance. Natalie needed $3,000 for inventory for a boutique that never opened. My father needed $5,000 to cover a business setback that was really another of Natalie's disasters. We needed $7,000 for a family vacation so we can all be together. A vacation I could barely participate in because I was working remotely the entire time to cover my responsibilities. Each request came wrapped in guilt and obligation. "After everything we've done for you." Family takes care of each other. Don't be selfish when your family needs help. Natalie would help if she could, but she's still finding her way. The emotional manipulation was sophisticated and relentless. They never demanded directly. Knock, they implied. They expressed disappointment when I hesitated. They framed every request as temporary, as urgent, as the last time they'd need help. But there was never repayment. Never gratitude that lasted longer than the transaction. Never acknowledgement of the pattern we'd established where I was the family ATM, available whenever they needed funds but invisible when it came to actual emotional support. I lived in that same studio apartment for 8 years while my peers bought homes, got married, started families. I drove that aging car until the mechanic told me he couldn't keep it running much longer. I worked 60, 70, 80-hour weeks, taking every client, never turning down work, building savings that repeatedly vanished into my family's bottomless need. When I was 33, something happened that should have woken me up. I met with a financial advisor, a requirement from one of my larger clients who wanted to ensure their contractors had stable finances. His name was Robert, and he was kind but direct. He reviewed my income statements, my expenses, my savings account. Then he printed out a report and slid it across his desk. Based on your income over the past 7 years and your relatively modest living expenses, you should have approximately $120,000 in savings. He pointed at the number on the page. Instead, you have 18,000. Can you explain this discrepancy? I looked at the transfers highlighted in yellow. Years of them. Hundreds of dollars here, thousands there, all flowing to my family. Money I'd given for emergencies that weren't emergencies, and for opportunities that never materialized, for problems that shouldn't have been mine to solve. Family, I said quietly. Have they paid any of this back? I shook my head. He was quiet for a moment. Then, Elena, this is financial exploitation. You've given your family over $100,000 in 5 years. That's more than a full year of your income, and they've given you nothing in return. I felt sick, seeing it quantified, calculated, made real. $100,000. 100,000 reasons they'd called me dependable, reliable, responsible. $100,000 I could have used for a home, for security, for a life that felt less like survival. But I left his office and did nothing, because confronting them felt impossible. Much because I'd been conditioned my entire life to believe my worth came from being useful, from not causing trouble, from supporting the family without complaint. Meanwhile, Natalie's ventures continued failing with predictable regularity. Every 2 years, a new startup, a new business idea, a new partnership that required investment. And every time my father covered the losses, liquidated assets, took out loans to give her another chance. When I was 34, I landed the biggest client of my career, a national campaign for a major retail brand. It was the kind of project that established you as top tier in the industry. 6 months of work, a substantial fee, my name attached to something that would be seen by millions. I was so excited to share the news that I drove to my parents' house for Sunday dinner, arriving early, rehearsing how I'd announce it. The family gathered around the table, my parents, Natalie, a few cousins. I waited for a pause in conversation, my heart pounding with that stupid, persistent hope that this time they'd be impressed. I have some exciting news, I began. I've been selected to lead the creative direction for the Campbell Retail Holiday Campaign. It's a national project, really high profile. This is the biggest thing I've ever done. My father looked up from his wine. Good for you, Elena. That sounds significant. 5 seconds. That's how long my achievement held their attention. 5 seconds. Then he turned to Natalie. Now, about this influencer partnership you mentioned last week. Tell us more about the potential reach. Your mother and I think there might be real opportunity there. And the conversation shifted. The attention flowing to Natalie's Instagram strategy, to her latest theory about building a personal brand, to speculation about whether this would be the thing that finally worked. I sat there, my national campaign forgotten, and felt that crack inside me widen. Not break, not yet, but widen. Spreading through the foundation of belief I'd built my life on. That night, I drove home to my studio apartment and looked around at my life. The same furniture I'd bought secondhand 8 years ago. The same view of a parking lot and a neighboring building. The same sense of running in place while everyone else moved forward. I'd given my family over $100,000 in 5 years. I'd sacrificed every dream, every chance at stability, every opportunity to build my own life. And I was still invisible to them. Still the dependable one who didn't need attention, celebration, or acknowledgement. I opened my laptop and started a new document, a tracking sheet. Every request they'd ever made, every transfer I'd completed, every promise of repayment that never materialized. I didn't know what I'd do with it. But for the first time, I was documenting the taking. It was a small act of rebellion, the beginning of something I didn't yet have the courage to name. But it was a beginning. 6 months later, at 35 years old, I finally did something I'd never done before. I saved money my family didn't know about. For 18 months, I kept a separate savings account at a different bank. Every time I completed a project, I transferred a percentage directly into that hidden account. Private tutoring sessions teaching design to college students. All of that money went straight there. Tax refunds, holiday bonuses from grateful clients, any money my family couldn't track. It all went into my secret savings. $50,000. The largest sum I'd ever saved in my entire life. I had a plan for the first time that was mine alone. I'd been pre-approved for a mortgage. I'd found a modest 2-bedroom condo in a decent neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it had good light and a small balcony and a kitchen where I could actually cook. The down payment was due in 3 weeks. I had closing documents prepared. I'd already imagined which room would be my home office, where I'd put my desk, how it would feel to own something that was mine. For the first time in my adult life, I felt hope. Then my mother called. Elena, we need to have a family meeting. Tomorrow evening, 6 o'clock. It's important. Something in her voice made my stomach drop. That tone, serious, slightly urgent, the one that preceded disaster. I arrived at my parents' house the next evening to find the whole family gathered in the living room. My parents sat on the couch, looking older somehow, their expressions grave. Natalie sat in an armchair, her fiancé Marcus beside her. I'd only met Marcus twice. He was a corporate attorney from a wealthy family, the kind of man who wore expensive suits and spoke with casual authority about things like investment portfolios and country club memberships. "Thank you for coming," my father began, his voice heavy. "We have a situation. A serious one." Here it comes, I thought. Another crisis. Another emergency. Another opportunity for me to prove my loyalty by sacrificing everything I've built. Marcus cleared his throat. He had the practiced composure of someone used to difficult conversations. "Natalie and I have been planning our wedding. We've secured the Grand Meridian Hotel for the reception." "It's going to be beautiful," Natalie interrupted, her eyes bright despite the supposedly serious nature of this meeting. "The ballroom overlooks the gardens, and we can have the ceremony outside if weather permits. It's exactly what I've always dreamed of." "The venue is significant," Marcus continued, "because my family has certain expectations. My father sits on several boards. My mother's on the committee for, well, it doesn't matter. The point is, image is important. We need this wedding to reflect our families appropriately." My mother picked up the thread. "We've been helping Natalie and Marcus with wedding costs. Your father and I have contributed $80,000 so far." $80,000. For a wedding. While I'd been eating ramen and saving desperately to buy a small condo. "But there's a problem," my father said. "The final costs are running higher than anticipated. The venue, the catering, the flowers. Everything is more expensive than we budgeted for. We're $60,000 short." $60,000 short. My hidden savings was $50,000. I felt that familiar dread settling in my chest. I knew where this was going. "We've maxed out what we can reasonably contribute," my father continued. "The business has been stretched thin helping Natalie's boutique." "Which closed last month," Natalie added quickly. "The market wasn't right." "But that's okay because this wedding is a new beginning." "We need help," my mother said, looking directly at me. "We need $45,000 to make this wedding happen." The room went silent. They all looked at me, waiting, expecting. 45,000? I repeated. "We wouldn't ask if we had any other option," my father said. "This is about family, Elena. This is about showing up for your sister on the most important day of her life." I felt something shift inside me, a tectonic plate moving, grinding against another, building pressure. "Why is the wedding so expensive?" Marcus answered, his tone patient. as if explaining to someone who didn't understand sophisticated matters. My family has certain standards. The Grand Meridian is where people in our circle hold their events. The guest list is 200 people, mostly my family's business associates and social connections. We can't cut corners without it reflecting poorly on our families. Our families, I repeated, but I'm not even. I stopped myself. Natalie leaned forward. I know it's a lot of money, but this is once in a lifetime. This wedding represents Marcus and me starting our future together. Don't you want me to be happy? That question. That manipulative, loaded question they'd been asking me my entire life. Don't you want your sister to be happy? As if happiness required my sacrifice. As if my dreams mattered less than hers. I've been saving for a home, I said quietly. And I'm supposed to close in 3 weeks. My mother's expression hardened slightly. You can buy a home any time. Your sister's wedding is now. Surely you understand priorities. Marcus added with that condescending edge that made my skin crawl. It's just money, Elena. You'll make more. This is about family. Just money. My entire savings. My dream. My future. Just money. The emotional manipulation reached its peak, swirling around me like a storm. My father reminded me of everything we've done for you, though he couldn't specify what that everything was. My mother emphasized family loyalty, family values, not being selfish when family needs help. Natalie cried, actual tears, asking if I really wanted to ruin her wedding, ruin her happiness, ruin the most important day of her life. I felt the guilt washing over me, and the trained response to prioritize everyone else's needs, the conditioning of 35 years telling me that my worth came from being useful, from sacrificing, from saying yes when no was the honest answer. But something was different this time. The crack inside me had spread, creating fissures throughout the foundation. I need time to think, I said. Give me 48 hours. My mother looked offended. What's there to think about? Your sister needs you. 48 hours, I repeated, standing. I'll give you an answer on Friday. I left before they could protest, drove home in a daze, parked in my usual spot, and sat in my car for 20 minutes. Then I went inside, opened my laptop, and looked at 15 years of financial records. Bank statements going back to when I was 20. Every transfer, every loan, every emergency that had required my money. I created a comprehensive spreadsheet. Dates, amounts, stated purposes, actual outcomes. The total came to $127,000. $127,000 I'd given my family over 15 years. None of it repaid. None of it even acknowledged anymore. I thought about my clients, many from modest backgrounds, who planned weddings they could actually afford, who would be horrified at the idea of demanding a family member sacrifice their life savings, who understood that love shouldn't require financial destruction. At 11 p.m., I called Rachel. She answered on the second ring, her voice concerned. Elena? What's wrong? I told her everything. 15 years of financial exploitation, the hidden pattern of taking, the current demand for my down payment money, everything I should have told her years ago but had been too conditioned, too guilty, too programmed to admit. Rachel was silent for a long moment. Then, Elena, this is insane. They've taken over $127,000 from you. Now they want your down payment? For a wedding? This isn't help. This is exploitation. I know. Do you? Because you're still considering it, aren't you? I was. Even after seeing the numbers, after calculating the total, after understanding the pattern intellectually, I was still considering giving them my savings because I'd been programmed for 35 years to believe my worth lay in supporting them. What if I say no and they hate me? I whispered. They're already treating you like an ATM, not a daughter. What exactly would you be losing? We talked for 2 hours. Rachel forced me to confront truths I'd been avoiding, to see patterns I'd normalized, to understand that what I called love was actually use. But in the end, I couldn't say no. Not yet. The conditioning ran too deep. Friday morning, I called my mother. I'll give you the money, but I have conditions. I want transparency about where it goes, and I want to be involved in the planning since I'm funding a significant portion. There was a pause. Then, of course, dear. We appreciate this so much. I transferred $45,000 that afternoon. My dream of homeownership evaporated in seconds. I called the real estate agent and canceled the closing. She was disappointed but understanding. The seller was less understanding. I lost my earnest money deposit. But I told myself it was temporary, that this was what family meant, that Natalie's happiness mattered. Then, 2 weeks later, came the betrayal that would change everything. I called my mother to discuss wedding planning. I wanted to understand where my money was going, to be involved in decisions about flowers or menu or something. My mother answered, and I could hear the impatience in her voice. Elena, we have a professional wedding planner handling everything. We don't need your input. You gave us the money. That's your contribution. Let us handle the actual wedding. I was stunned. I'm not involved in planning? At all? Why would you be? You're not getting married. Natalie and Marcus need to make these decisions with our guidance. You've done your part. My part, writing a check, being useful, then disappearing. A month later, formal invitations went out. Beautiful cream cardstock with gold lettering, elegant calligraphy, an embossed design of intertwined flowers. I watched my parents' friends post photos of theirs on social media. I watched distant relatives share pictures, commenting on how lovely the invitation was. Mine never came. I waited a week, thinking it was delayed. Then 2 weeks. Then I couldn't wait anymore. I called Natalie. Hey, I haven't received my invitation yet. Did something happen with the mail? Oh. Her voice changed, becoming careful. Elena, can we meet for coffee? Like, today? We met at a cafe downtown. Natalie ordered an expensive latte, paid with a credit card I'd helped clear the debt from 2 years ago. We sat at a corner table, and I watched her prepare herself for whatever she needed to say. So, what about the wedding? She began. Mom, Dad, Marcus, and I had a long discussion, and we think it's better if you don't attend. The words didn't make sense at first. I heard them, but they didn't connect to meaning. Don't attend? I repeated. Marcus's family is very image conscious. They're prominent people, judges, business executives, politicians. The wedding is partly about the joining of our families and... She looked down at her latte. Your work is great. You've done really well for yourself, but you don't fit the aesthetic we're creating. The aesthetic. Everyone else is very established, very successful in traditional ways. Lawyers, doctors, executives. You're a freelance designer. It would be awkward. People would ask questions. I stared at my sister. I gave you $45,000, my entire savings, my down payment for a home. And you're not inviting me to the wedding? We're grateful for the financial help, obviously. But the wedding itself is about Marcus and me, and the image we're presenting to his family. You understand, right? She reached across the table, tried to take my hand. I pulled away. It's not personal, Elena. It was entirely personal. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. Other cafe patrons glanced over. Natalie looked embarrassed. Elena, don't make a scene. I gave up my dream for your wedding, a wedding I'm not good enough to attend. It's not about being good enough. It's about image. I know. You've made that very clear. I walked out of that cafe, got in my car, and sat in the parking lot for 30 minutes. Then I drove home. We spread out 15 years of bank statements across my living room floor and felt something inside me finally break completely. Not crack, break, shatter into pieces that could never be reassembled into what they'd been before. I called Rachel. "I need help," I said. "I need to do something I should have done years ago." "What's that?" "I need to stop being invisible." The next 3 months were surreal. I watched my family prepare for a wedding I'd funded but wasn't invited to. My mother posted constantly on social media, photos of cake tastings, flower arrangements, venue walkthroughs. Natalie shared endless updates, dress fittings, bridesmaid luncheons, bridal shower photos. Every moment I should have been part of, every tradition I should have shared, all documented and public while I watched from outside. I still attended Sunday dinners occasionally, though less frequently. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. They'd discuss wedding details casually over pasta, table arrangements, music selections, whether to serve chicken or beef, as if my exclusion was perfectly normal, as if I hadn't given them $45,000 to make it possible. Not once did anyone mention the money. No updates on expenses, no gratitude, no acknowledgement. When I tried to bring it up one evening, my father said dismissively, "We appreciate the contribution, Elena," with the same tone you'd use thanking someone for bringing wine to dinner. Contribution. As if I'd given $500. Not my entire life savings. But during those 3 months, something changed. I stopped being passive. I started documenting everything. It began with a routine visit to my parents' house. I'd gone to pick up some old business mail that still occasionally arrived there, correspondence from clients before I'd updated my business address. My mother was in the garden, my father at work. I was collecting envelopes from the hall table when I heard her voice through the open kitchen window. She was on the phone, and she sounded pleased. "Yes, the wedding is completely covered. We're actually under budget now. After Elena's contribution, we'll have about $30,000 left over. We're thinking of putting it toward upgrading their honeymoon. Marcus's parents are already handling the house down payment, so this is just extra luxury." I froze. Under budget? 30,000 left over? They'd told me the wedding was $60,000 over budget. That they desperately needed 45,000 or the wedding couldn't happen. That it was an emergency, a crisis, a family obligation. But they'd had the money, or the crisis was exaggerated, or they'd manipulated the numbers to extract my savings while having resources of their own. I stood there in the hallway, holding those envelopes, feeling something cold and clear crystallize inside me. When my mother came back inside, I was waiting. "You said the wedding needed $45,000 or it couldn't happen." She startled, not expecting me. Then her expression shifted to annoyance. "You're still here? I thought you'd left. You said you desperately needed the money." "We said we wanted help." "Don't twist words, Elena. Really, this is your sister's wedding. Why are you making everything about money? What happened to my $45,000 specifically?" She waved her hand dismissively. "It went into the wedding fund. It all blends together. Does it really matter? The wedding is covered. That's what's important." It mattered profoundly. They'd lied, or at minimum dramatically exaggerated, to manipulate me into giving up my home. They'd taken my savings while having other options. They'd used emotional manipulation, Natalie's happiness, family loyalty, the once-in-a-lifetime nature of weddings, to extract money they didn't actually need. And then they'd excluded me from the event my money was funding. I left without another word, drove straight to Rachel's office. She was between meetings, and when she saw my face, she closed her door and gave me her full attention. "They lied," I said, "about needing the money. They're under budget. They have 30,000 left over for honeymoon upgrades." Rachel was quiet for a moment. Then, tell me you've been documenting everything. I had been. For 3 months, I'd saved every text message, every email, every social media post. I had the bank transfer confirmation for the 45,000. I had recordings. I'd started recording conversations after the coffee shop meeting where Natalie uninvited me, a decision that had felt paranoid, but was proving necessary. We spent that evening organizing everything. Rachel was methodical, creating a legal standard documentation file, bank statements going back 15 years, every transfer to my family, every text requesting money, every broken promise of repayment, and the wedding fund transfer with the manipulative context around it. Screenshots of my mother's social media posts about the beautiful, fully covered wedding, the recording of Natalie explaining why I wasn't good enough to attend. The total came to $127,000 with calculated interest, closer to $150,000 when accounting for what that money would have earned if properly saved. Rachel leaned back in her chair, reviewing the documentation. You could sue for fraud, financial exploitation, breach of verbal contracts. You'd win. I don't want money, I said. The realization surprised me, but it was true. I want them to see what they've done. I want accountability. I want witnesses. What do you want to happen? I thought carefully. I've spent my entire life being the family secret. The daughter who doesn't fit their image, who gets used financially but hidden socially. They're so worried about image, about what Marcus's prominent family thinks, about maintaining appearances. I want the truth to be public. I want their image-obsessed wedding guests to know exactly how this wedding was funded. The wedding, Rachel said slowly. You want to tell them at the wedding? Not during the ceremony. I won't disrupt that. But at the reception, when everyone's there, when Marcus's prominent family is watching, during the toasts, when people share words for the happy couple, I'll share mine. Rachel was quiet. Then, that's nuclear, Elena. There's no going back from that. Your family will never forgive you. They don't value me now. What exactly am I losing? We discussed every possible risk. Permanent family rupture. Likely. Almost certain. Other relatives taking their side. Possible. Even probable. Social backlash. People calling me vindictive. Or jealous. Definitely. The chance that this would destroy any future relationship with Natalie, guaranteed. But for each risk, Rachel asked the critical question, and what does that cost you? If relatives who watched you be exploited for 15 years turn against you, are they really losses? If friends require your silence about abuse to remain friends, are they actually friends? If your family values you only as a financial resource, is that really family? What do you want to happen after? Rachel asked. Do you want them to apologize? To understand? To change? I realized I couldn't control their response. I could only control my truth-telling. I want to stop carrying their secrets. When I want to stop protecting people who won't protect me, I want to be visible, even if it means being alone. Over the next 2 weeks, we prepared carefully. Rachel helped me draft my speech. Not emotional rambling, but calm, factual statements backed by documentation. We practiced until I could deliver it without crying, without my voice shaking, without visible anger. Just truth, stated clearly and undeniably. I also took practical steps. I moved my remaining savings to new accounts my family couldn't access. I changed all my passwords, updated my will, removed my parents as emergency contacts. I was cutting off their access, financially and practically, permanently. Rachel created a legal safety net. If my family tried to retaliate, threatening me, spreading lies, attempting to harm my business, we had evidence ready. We had witness statements from people who'd watched this dynamic. We had documentation that would hold up in court. You don't have to do this, Rachel said the week before the wedding. You could just walk away. Cut contact? Rebuild your life? Let them wonder why. They wouldn't wonder. They'd forget. I'd be the daughter who drifted away, and they'd use that to play victim. I looked at the folder containing 15 years of evidence. I need them to know I'm leaving because of what they did, not because I'm ungrateful or difficult, or any other narrative they'd create. The morning of the wedding, I stood in my apartment getting ready. I chose a professional outfit. Elegant but not flashy. Appropriate for a wedding but clearly not wedding party attire. I did my makeup carefully. I looked like someone successful, confident, worthy, even if my family had never seen me that way. I picked up the leather folder Rachel and I had prepared. Inside was the complete documentation, bank statements, transfer records, messages, recordings. Also a single sheet of paper, a receipt, essentially. A detailed accounting of 15 years of financial support, totaling $127,000 with calculated interest. I wasn't seeking repayment, though legally I could. I was seeking acknowledgement. I was seeking to stop being invisible. I texted Rachel, "I'm ready." She responded immediately, "I'll be there. Front row. You're not alone." I looked around my studio apartment one last time before everything changed. At the life I'd built despite them. At the business I'd created without their support. At the strength I'd developed through years of being undervalued. I'd spent 35 years making myself small so they could feel big. 35 years believing that if I just achieved enough, sacrificed enough, proved myself enough, they'd finally see my worth. Today, that ended. Today, I became visible, whether they wanted to see me or not. Rachel Chen had been my best friend for 10 years, though I hadn't fully appreciated what that meant until I needed her most. We'd met when she hired me to rebrand her financial consulting firm. She was 30, newly independent after leaving a corporate job, building something of her own. I was 25, still establishing my business, desperate for clients and validation. And what started as a professional relationship became something deeper. Rachel was the friend who saw through my trained compliance, who questioned patterns I'd normalized, who gently pointed out that maybe my family's treatment of me wasn't actually normal. She came from poverty, real poverty, the kind where food insecurity was routine and college seemed impossible. But she'd earned scholarships, built a career, established boundaries with her family early, even when it cost her relationships temporarily. She represented what I could be: successful, boundaried, free. The week before the wedding, she became my anchor. We met at her house most evenings after her daughter was asleep. We'd sit at her kitchen table with tea and documentation spread between us, planning for what I was about to do. "Let's talk worst-case scenarios," Rachel said one evening. "I need you to really think through what could happen. They'll hate me. They already don't value you. What's the functional difference?" That stopped me. I guess I'll have to stop pretending they might change. What else? Extended family will take their side. My parents will frame me as vindictive, unstable, jealous. They'll tell everyone I ruined Natalie's wedding out of spite. Rachel nodded. "And when those relatives call you, angry and accusatory, what will you say?" We practiced. Rachel played my aunt, my uncle, various family members who might confront me. She was harsh, deliberately, throwing accusations I needed to be prepared for. "You humiliated your sister. You're jealous because she's getting married. Family doesn't air private matters publicly. You're vindictive and cruel." For each accusation, I practiced responding calmly. I told the truth about financial exploitation. If the truth is humiliating, that's not my fault. I have documentation of everything I said. I gave them $127,000 over 15 years. Is that vindictive? "What about Marcus's family?" Rachel asked. "They're prominent people. What if they judge you? Then they judge me. I don't know them. Their opinion doesn't define my worth. What if Natalie never speaks to you again? That one hurt more. Despite everything, I loved my sister. Then I'll grieve that loss. But I can't keep sacrificing myself for a relationship where I'm only valuable when I'm useful. Rachel leaned forward. Elena, I need to ask you something serious. What do you want to happen after the speech? Do you want them to apologize? To understand? To beg for forgiveness? I thought about that carefully. I want them to face what they've done, to hear the truth in front of witnesses, to experience consequences. But you can't control their response. They might deny everything. They might double down, attack you, play victim. Are you prepared for that? I have documentation. If they deny it, I have proof. But what if they still don't care? What if you tell the truth and nothing changes except now you have no family? I was quiet for a long time. Then, I already have no family. Not really. When I have people who use me and people who ignore me, if I walk away without speaking, I carry their secret. I protect them from consequences of their behavior. I'm done protecting people who won't protect me. Rachel squeezed my hand. Then let's make sure you're ready. We practiced my speech dozens of times, not for performance. I wasn't trying to be dramatic or entertaining. I was practicing composure. The ability to state facts calmly, clearly, without my voice breaking or my hands shaking or my anger showing. Rachel helped me trim emotional language. Instead of, they destroyed my dreams, say, I gave up my home down payment. Facts, not feelings. Make it undeniable. We also prepared for practical aftermath. Rachel reviewed my business accounts, confirmed all family members were removed from any access points. She set up new banking security, changed my business insurance beneficiaries, updated my emergency contacts. She created what she called a safety plan. If my family became aggressive or threatening, I had evidence secured, legal resources prepared, witnesses ready. If they try to harm your business, calling clients, spreading lies, leaving fake reviews, we have defamation grounds, she explained. If they try to claim you stole from them, we have documentation proving the opposite. If they try to paint you as unstable, we have witness statements from people who've watched this dynamic for years. One evening, 3 days before the wedding, Rachel asked the question I'd been avoiding. What do you want your life to look like after this? I looked around her comfortable home. The photos of her daughter, the artwork on the walls, yearned the sense of peace and stability. I want what you have, not specifically, but the feeling. I want to wake up without guilt. I want to work without every dollar being earmarked for someone else's emergency. I want relationships where care is mutual, not just me giving endlessly. You can have that, but you might have to build it with people who aren't blood relatives. I think I'm okay with that. The night before the wedding, Rachel came to my apartment. We sat on my small balcony watching the city lights, drinking tea in comfortable silence. Last chance, she finally said. Are you absolutely sure about this? Once you speak those words, you can't take them back. I'm sure. You might lose everyone. Your parents, your sister, aunts, uncles, cousins. People who've known you your whole life might turn against you. Have you ever been made invisible by people who should see you most clearly? I asked. It's a special kind of loneliness. It feels like you're shouting in a room full of people, and no one hears you. I've been invisible for 35 years. If speaking makes people turn against me, at least I'll know I was visible enough to upset them. Rachel was quiet. Then, I'll be there. Front row. When you look out at that reception and feel alone, look for me. Remember, you're not alone. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This is going to be hard. I know. You're going to question yourself afterward. Wonder if you went too far, if you should have stayed silent, if you should have protected them. Don't. Remember what they did. Remember $127,000. Remember being excluded from a wedding you funded. Remember every time they made you small, so Natalie could feel big. I nodded. I'd written it all down, actually. A letter to my future self for the moments when guilt would try to reclaim me. A reminder of every instance of exploitation, every dismissal, every time I'd made myself smaller. What happens if I get up there and freeze? I asked. You won't. We've practiced 50 times. You know this speech better than your own phone number. But if you do freeze, I'll stand up. We'll walk out together. There are no wrong choices here except the one where you keep carrying their secrets. We sat there until late, not talking much, just being present. Rachel understood what I needed, not reassurance that everything would be fine, because it wouldn't be. But reminder that I wasn't alone, worrying that someone saw my worth even if my family didn't. When she left, she hugged me tightly. Tomorrow, you stop being invisible. Whatever happens after that, we'll figure it out. But tomorrow, they finally have to see you. I spent the rest of that night awake, not from anxiety, but from clarity. I'd made peace with the potential consequences. I'd rather have dignity and distance than proximity and exploitation. I'd rather be alone and visible than surrounded and invisible. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror at 2 in the morning. I saw someone strong looking back. Someone who'd survived 35 years of systematic undervaluing and still built a successful business, still maintained her integrity, still had capacity for kindness despite being shown so little. I saw someone brave enough to demand to be seen. Tomorrow, my family would have no choice but to see me, whether they wanted to or not. The Grand Meridian Hotel was even more beautiful in person. The ceremony took place in the garden, roses climbing white trellises, chairs arranged in perfect rows, string quartet playing softly. I stood outside the reception hall entrance, watching through the glass as guests moved from ceremony to cocktail hour. Rachel stood beside me, a calming presence. Security approached again, a different guard than before, but the same question. Do you have an invitation? I'm the bride's sister, I said calmly. I'm entering for the reception. I'll need to verify. I funded nearly half this wedding. I have documentation. I pulled out the leather folder. Would you like to call your supervisor, or shall we discuss this in front of all these guests? He hesitated, speaking into his radio. The same coordinator from earlier appeared, Sarah looking stressed. She recognized me immediately. Ms. Martinez, if you'll just wait. I'm entering the reception, I said calmly. Not the ceremony. I won't cause disruption. But I have every legal right to be at an event I financially contributed to. She looked between me and the growing crowd of guests. Creating a scene would be worse than letting me in. Please be respectful, she finally said. I intend to be honest, I replied. How respectful that feels is up to them. Rachel and I entered with the cocktail hour crowd. The ballroom was extraordinary. Crystal chandeliers, elaborate floral arrangements, round tables with champagne linens, a live band. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Marcus's family was immediately visible, well-dressed, confident, the kind of people who looked comfortable at expensive events. I saw my parents by the bar, greeting guests. My mother wore that emerald dress, my father his tailored suit. They looked distinguished, proud, like parents whose investment in their daughters had paid off exactly as planned. Then my father saw me. His face went from pleased to shocked to furious in seconds. He approached quickly, trying not to make a scene. What are you doing here? You weren't invited. I funded $45,000 of this wedding, I said quietly. I have every right to be here. He grabbed my arm, trying to escort me out. Rachel intervened immediately, stepping between us. Touch her again, and I'm calling the police for assault. She has legal right to be at an event she financially contributed to. If you want to have that conversation here, in front of all these people? My mother joined us, her face tight with barely controlled anger. She was trying to smile, to look calm for any guests who might be watching. Leave now, Elena, or we'll have you removed. Remove me, I said calmly, and I'll tell security, and everyone here, exactly how much money I contributed to make this wedding possible. Shall we see how that looks for your image? They were trapped. Creating a scene would be worse than letting me stay. My father's face was red with fury, but he stepped back. Stay in the back. Don't talk to anyone. Don't approach Natalie or Marcus. Rachel and I positioned ourselves at a table in the back corner. The reception proceeded around us. Dinner was served. An elaborate 3-course meal. The band played elegant music. Guests laughed, toasted, celebrated. It was the perfect image they'd wanted, exclusive, polished, expensive. I saw Natalie glowing in her wedding dress, Marcus beside her in his tuxedo. She kept glancing at me nervously, but Marcus was oblivious. His parents clearly didn't know who I was, or that there was tension. They were enjoying themselves, comfortable in their element. After dinner, the toasts began. The best man stood, one of Marcus's law school friends, and gave a warm, funny speech about their friendship. Everyone laughed, applauded. The maid of honor followed, Natalie's college roommate, with a sweet story about love and happiness. More applause. Then the DJ made an announcement. We're opening the floor to anyone who'd like to share words for the happy couple. This is your chance to offer love and wisdom to the bride and groom. A few people stood, sharing brief messages. An aunt, a family friend, one of Marcus's colleagues. The speeches were warm, traditional, safe. I looked at Rachel. She squeezed my hand. You sure? I nodded. I stood up. Rachel rose with me, moral support, ready to leave together if needed. I walked to the front of the room where the DJ stood with a microphone. The crowd quieted, curious about who this woman was. My parents looked panicked. Natalie's face went white. Marcus looked confused. He genuinely didn't know who I was. I took the microphone. My hands were steady. My voice was calm. Good evening. I'm Elena, Natalie's older sister. I paused. Some of you may not know me. I wasn't on the original guest list, but I wanted to share something important tonight. The room went completely silent. You could hear the soft music from the band, now paused. Yet the rustle of expensive fabric as 200 people shifted in their seats. 6 months ago, I continued, my voice clear and measured, my family asked me for $45,000 to help make this beautiful wedding possible. I gave them my entire down payment savings, money I'd spent 3 years accumulating to buy my first home. I gave it because family is supposed to support each other. Gasps rippled through the room. Marcus's parents looked shocked, glancing at each other. Guests exchanged confused looks. My father stood up, but Rachel's gesture to the security guard made him sit back down. 2 weeks after I transferred that money, I was told I wouldn't be invited to the wedding. My voice remained calm, factual. I wasn't polished enough, wasn't established enough, didn't fit the image they were creating for Marcus's prominent family. I gave up my dream of homeownership to fund a wedding I wasn't allowed to attend. The room was utterly silent now. Natalie was crying, her makeup running. My mother's face was frozen in horror. Marcus looked between his bride and me, realizing he'd married into a family crisis. For 15 years, I continued, I've given my family over $127,000. Business ventures that failed, emergency expenses that weren't really emergencies, family vacations I helped fund but barely participated in. I gave because I believed that's what love meant. I believed that if I sacrificed enough, I'd matter to them. I held up my leather folder. I have documentation. Every transfer, every request, every broken promise of repayment. Bank statements. Me text messages, recordings. I'm not here to ask for money back. Though legally I could. I'm here to stop being invisible. I looked directly at my parents, then at Natalie. My voice strengthened. You can exclude me from your celebrations. You can take my money. You can decide I'm not good enough to be seen by important people. But you can't take my dignity. Not anymore. I walked to the gift table, piled with elegantly wrapped presents, and placed my folder among them. A record of truth among the wrapped gifts. To the happy couple, I said, facing Natalie and Marcus, I wish you genuine happiness, the kind built on honesty rather than image, and to everyone here. I looked out at the sea of shocked faces, at Marcus's prominent family, at relatives I'd known my whole life. Sometimes the cost of maintaining family peace is sacrificing yourself. I'm done paying that cost. I handed the microphone back to the DJ, who looked stunned. Then I walked toward the exit. Rachel followed. Behind us, the ballroom erupted. Whispers became conversations. Conversations became arguments. I heard my mother's voice rising, my father trying to explain, Marcus's parents demanding answers, guests pulling out phones, probably already texting friends about the drama they'd just witnessed. The perfect image my family had spent $80,000 creating, $125,000 with my contribution, had shattered in under 3 minutes. Outside, the evening air felt cold and clean. I was shaking, but not from fear. From release. From the weight of 35 years lifting. Rachel hugged me tightly. You did it. You told the truth. I can't believe I actually did that. I can. You've been brave your whole life. Tonight you were just finally brave in a way they couldn't ignore. We walked toward the parking lot, away from the hotel, away from the chaos we'd left behind. My phone was already buzzing in my purse. Messages, calls, probably furious family members. I didn't check it. Not yet. What now? I asked. Now you rebuild. On your own terms. With people who value you for who you are, not what you can give them. I looked back at the Grand Meridian Hotel one last time. Through the windows I could see the ballroom still in chaos. My family's perfect wedding, disrupted by truth. Their carefully constructed image, crumbling because they'd built it on my silence. I'd been invisible for 35 years. Tonight, I'd force them to see me. And even if it cost me everything, even if I lost every relationship I'd been desperately clinging to, it was worth it, because I'd finally chosen myself. And that felt like breathing after nearly drowning. The video appeared online within hours. Someone at the wedding had recorded my speech on their phone and posted it. By the next morning, it had 2 million views. By the end of the week, 15 million. The video was titled, Sister Crashes Wedding After Family Takes $45,000, then Uninvites Her. Media outlets picked it up. Family financial exploitation became a trending topic on social media. My phone was unusable. Hundreds of messages, friend requests, emails. I turned it off. Let it sit silent on my kitchen counter while I tried to process what I'd done. The messages I did see before turning it off were split. Some were supportive, people thanking me for speaking truth, sharing their own stories of family exploitation. Others were harsh, people saying I'd ruined my sister's wedding day, that family matters should stay private, that I was vindictive and cruel. But overwhelmingly, the response was support. Thousands of comments from people who'd lived similar dynamics. I gave my family $80,000 and they didn't come to my college graduation. I'm the invisible daughter too. Thank you for saying what I've been afraid to. My family only calls when they need money. Your story gave me permission to set boundaries. Then came my family's response. My father called 17 times that first day. I didn't answer. He left voicemails that I listened to once, then deleted. You've destroyed our family reputation. Marcus's family is appalled. Do you understand what you've done? You humiliated your sister on her wedding day. This is unforgivable. Don't bother trying to contact us again. You're not welcome in this family. My mother sent long texts. How could you do this to us? We gave you everything. We raised you, supported you, loved you. And you repay us by humiliating us in front of everyone? Your brother is being questioned at work. People we've known for decades won't speak to us. You've always been jealous of Natalie. Now everyone sees how vindictive you really are. That last line almost made me laugh. I'd given them $127,000. I'd sacrificed 15 years of financial security. But I was vindictive. Natalie sent a single text 2 days after the wedding. I can't believe you did this. You ruined the most important day of my life. Everyone was talking about you instead of celebrating us. Marcus's parents think our family is dysfunctional. I never want to see you again. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I replied, I didn't ruin your wedding. I told the truth. If the truth ruined it, that's not my fault. You took my money and excluded me. I documented everything I said. Maybe think about why the truth is so damaging. She blocked me. But then came unexpected responses. Extended family members I barely knew reached out privately. My father's youngest sister. I watched them treat you differently for years. I said something once, and your mother didn't speak to me for 6 months. I was too afraid to say anything after that. But you were right. Is what they did to you was wrong. A cousin I hadn't talked to in years. I experienced the same favoritism in my family. My sister got everything while I got nothing. Your courage helped me recognize my situation for what it was. Thank you. 3 relatives confided they'd experienced financial exploitation in their own families. My truth had given them permission to acknowledge their own. The professional consequences were mixed. 2 clients emailed to end their contracts, uncomfortable with the public family drama. But 5 new clients reached out specifically because they'd seen the video. They appreciated my values and boundaries. My business didn't suffer. It evolved. I became more selective, only accepting work from people whose values aligned with mine. 1 week after the wedding, a formal letter arrived from Rachel's law firm. She'd sent it to my parents and Natalie. This letter constitutes formal demand for repayment of documented loans, $45,000 from wedding contribution accepted under false pretenses, plus $35,000 in documented loans where repayment was explicitly promised. Total, $80,000. Payment must be received within 60 days or legal action will proceed. Documentation attached. The documentation was extensive. Bank transfers, text messages, recorded conversations, witness statements from people who'd watched this dynamic for years. My father called Rachel's firm, trying to negotiate around me. Rachel recorded the call. This is ridiculous, he said. Family doesn't sue family. Rachel's response was cold and professional. Family doesn't exploit family for 15 years, but since you did, we're using the legal system. You have 60 days. They tried claiming poverty. They couldn't possibly pay $80,000. Rachel countered with evidence. Their house value, my father's salary, investment accounts. The fact that they'd spent $30,000 on honeymoon upgrades after claiming they desperately needed my $45,000. You have resources, Rachel told them. You simply never intended to repay. Pay voluntarily, or we proceed with public litigation. Imagine how that will look to Marcus's prominent family. Eventually, they agreed to a payment plan, $2,000 monthly for 40 months. It was legally binding with penalties for missed payments. They wouldn't pay because they felt guilty. They'd pay because the alternative was worse. The social consequences rippled through my life. Some mutual friends stopped calling, she uncomfortable taking sides or believing I'd gone too far. But I realized those weren't real friendships if they required my silence about exploitation. Other relationships strengthened. Friends I'd been distant from reached out with support. Colleagues shared their own family trauma. I discovered a community of people who understood, who'd survived similar dynamics. 3 months after the wedding, with Rachel's guidance, I completely restructured my relationship with family money. I blocked my parents and Natalie on everything except the legal payment platform. I sent a formal email to all extended family. I'm no longer available for financial support of any kind. This boundary isn't negotiable. If you need money, I'm not your resource. If you can't respect this, we can't have a relationship. Some relatives were offended. Others respected it. Either way, the boundary held. The viral video created unexpected opportunities. Podcasts wanted to interview me about family financial boundaries. A domestic violence organization asked me to speak at their conference. Financial abuse within families was rarely discussed. I wasn't interested in fame, but I was interested in helping others recognize patterns before 15 years passed. I started creating content, blog posts, videos, workshops about financial exploitation in families, the favoritism dynamics that enabled it, how to recognize manipulation, how to set boundaries without guilt. The audience grew steadily, mostly women, elder daughters, people in caregiving roles who'd been conditioned to sacrifice endlessly. You gave me permission to say no, people wrote. You helped me see I wasn't crazy. Your story saved me from years of what you experienced. 4 months after the wedding, I found a condo. Smaller than what I'd originally planned, but perfect. Good light, quiet neighborhood, space for a proper home office. I used business profits for the down payment, refusing to touch savings again. Rachel and other real friends helped me move in. It was mine, built without family interference, earned without sacrifice or manipulation. The first space I'd ever owned that felt completely like freedom. One afternoon, unpacking boxes, I received a message through my business website. A young woman named Sophie. I saw your speech at your sister's wedding. My family has been asking me to fund my brother's wedding while I'm barely making rent. I've felt so guilty for hesitating. Your story gave me permission to say no, to understand that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's survival. Thank you for being brave enough to tell the truth. You saved me from years of what you experienced. I hope you know how many people you've helped by refusing to stay silent. I read that message 3 times, then showed it to Rachel when she came over that evening. This is the ripple effect, Rachel said. You didn't just free yourself. You gave permission to others. I destroyed my family relationships for this. Did you? Or did you stop pretending exploitation was family? 5 months after the wedding, the monthly payments arrived like clockwork. $2,000, transferred electronically, with no message, no contact, no relationship. Just money, slowly repaid, an acknowledgement of debt, without admission of wrongdoing. I didn't need the money anymore. My business was thriving, but I kept the payments as evidence, proof that I'd been right, that the exploitation was real, that I hadn't imagined 15 years of systematic undervaluing. Have you ever wondered if you're the problem? If maybe you're too sensitive, too demanding, too ungrateful? I'd wondered that for 35 years. The payments were validation. I wasn't crazy. They had taken from me. They had exploited my love and compliance. And now, they were finally facing consequences. 6 months after the wedding, I ran into my mother at a community fundraiser. Unavoidable in a mid-sized city where certain social circles overlap. We saw each other across the room. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she approached. Slowly, carefully. She looked older somehow, less certain. Elena. Mom. Silence. Around us, the fundraiser continued, people mingling, laughing, unaware of the chasm between us. You look well, she finally said. It wasn't kind or warm, just observation. I am well, I replied. And I meant it. I was well in ways I'd never been when I was part of their family. She opened her mouth as if to say something else, then closed it. What was there to say? She couldn't apologize without admitting wrongdoing. She couldn't justify their behavior without sounding worse. She couldn't ask for relationship without acknowledging what she'd destroyed. I should go, she said. Okay. I watched her leave, feeling a complicated mix of emotions. Sadness for what we'd never been. Relief that I was no longer trapped in that dynamic. Peace that came from knowing I'd chosen dignity over approval. We were strangers now. Connected only by biology and history, not by love or care or mutual respect. And I'd made peace with that. That evening, sitting in my condo, my space, my home, I realized something profound. I hadn't lost my family by telling the truth. I'd lost the illusion that I'd ever had their respect to begin with. And I'd gained something far more valuable. Myself. 1 year after the wedding, I sat in my living room on a Sunday morning, coffee in hand, sunlight streaming through windows I'd chosen, in a space I'd earned without sacrifice or manipulation. I was 36 years old. For the first time in my life, I was choosing myself. The relationship with my parents remained fractured. They made their monthly payments, $2,000, like clockwork, purely transactional. No communication beyond the payment confirmation. No apologies. No acknowledgement. No relationship. Just money, slowly repaid over years. Natalie had sent one email 6 months after the wedding. I'm starting to understand some of what you said, but I'm not ready to talk. I'd responded simply, when you are, I'm here. I didn't expect reconciliation. I'd learned that healing doesn't require the people who hurt you to change. It requires you to change your relationship with the pain. My life had transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined while trapped in their dynamics. My business thrived. I was more selective about clients now, more confident in my worth, more willing to charge what I deserved. I'd hired 2 junior designers, mentoring them not just in design but in business practices and boundaries. I taught them what I'd learned the hard way. Your worth isn't determined by how much you sacrifice. I'd become a speaker on family financial boundaries, not positioning myself as an expert, but as someone who'd lived the experience and found freedom. I traveled to conferences and workshops, sharing my story. My message resonated especially with women, elder daughters, people in caregiving roles who'd been conditioned to believe their value came from endless giving. My personal life had blossomed unexpectedly. I was dating Daniel, a therapist who understood trauma and boundaries. We'd met through the speaking circuit. He'd attended one of my workshops, introduced himself afterward, asked thoughtful questions about family systems and exploitation patterns. What started as a professional connection became personal. He thought my strength was remarkable. He appreciated my work and celebrated my achievements. He contributed equally to our relationship and had never, not once, asked me for money. He understood that love shouldn't require disappearing. I'd built a chosen family. Rachel and her family, other friends who showed up consistently, reciprocated care, celebrated my birthday with genuine enthusiasm. I experienced for the first time what healthy relationships felt like: balanced, mutual, respectful, love that didn't require sacrifice. One afternoon in late spring, I encountered my mother at a community event. We'd been successfully avoiding each other for months, but this gathering was too small for that. We ended up in line for coffee, trapped by social convention. Hello, Elena. Mom. We stood in awkward silence. and she looked older than her years, the weight of maintaining appearances taking its toll. "You look well," she said. The same observation as before. "I am well." She ordered her coffee and I thought she'd leave, but she hesitated. "We always loved you, Elena. We just—" Natalie needed more help. Something about the defensiveness in her voice unlocked a truth I hadn't articulated before. I responded gently but firmly. "Needing more help and deserving all the resources are different things. You could have loved us equally while acknowledging we had different needs. Instead, you created a hierarchy where one daughter mattered more than the other. That was a choice." My mother had no response. We stood there for a moment. Two women who'd once been mother and daughter, now strangers who shared only history. "I should go," she finally said. "Okay." I watched her leave, feeling peace instead of pain. I'd said what needed saying. She'd heard it, even if she couldn't accept it. That was enough. The most powerful moment came from an unexpected place. A young woman named Mira had hired me for a branding project. During our second meeting, she mentioned struggling financially because she was supporting her family's business ventures. I paused our work discussion. "Can I share something with you?" I told her. Not all my story, but enough. Enough that she understood she wasn't obligated to fund her family's dreams at the expense of her own. Enough that she recognized exploitation patterns before they consumed decades of her life. "Your life isn't a supporting role in someone else's story," I told her. "You're the main character of your own. Don't forget that." She cried. Not from sadness, but from recognition. Someone finally saw her pattern, named it, gave her permission to choose differently. That evening, I sat in my home office recording a video for my blog. I'd been thinking about this message for weeks, and I finally felt ready to articulate it. I looked into the camera and spoke directly. People ask if I regret the wedding speech, if I regret losing my family. Here's the truth. I regret the years I spent believing that love meant endless sacrifice without reciprocity. I regret not setting boundaries sooner. I regret making myself small so other people could feel big. But I don't regret telling the truth. For the first time in my life, I chose dignity over approval, and it feels like breathing after nearly drowning. I continued. If you're watching this and you're the family ATM, and the invisible sibling, the one whose achievements are footnotes to someone else's story, hear me. Your worth isn't measured by how much you give up. Love doesn't require you to disappear. Sacrifice without reciprocity isn't love, it's exploitation. And telling the truth about mistreatment isn't betrayal. Silence protects people who harm us. Truth protects the people they might harm next. The video was viewed over 2 million times. The comments filled with people sharing their own moments of choosing themselves, of saying no for the first time, of walking away from relationships that required their invisibility. 1 year after the wedding, I looked around my life with genuine contentment. I lived in a condo I'd earned without family interference. I had work I loved with clients who valued me. I was dating someone who thought my strength was attractive, not threatening. I had friends who reciprocated care and attention. I spoke at conferences, wrote a blog that helped thousands, mentored younger professionals. My life was quiet, full, and entirely my own. I kept one photo on my desk. Not a family photo, but a picture Rachel had taken at my first speaking engagement. I was mid-sentence, looking confident and clear, a reminder of the moment I stopped being invisible. People sometimes asked if I'd reconcile with my family. Maybe, I told them, if they acknowledged what they'd done, took responsibility, demonstrated changed behavior over time. But I wasn't waiting for that. I wasn't holding my life hostage to their potential growth. I'd learned the most important lesson. You can't make people value you. And you can only decide that you're not available for relationships where you have to earn basic respect through sacrifice. One Sunday morning, Exactly 1 year after the wedding, I received an email from Natalie. I've been in therapy, working through family dynamics, understanding patterns. I'm starting to see some things differently. I'm not ready to talk yet. But I wanted you to know. I think I understand now. Some of what you said, about feeling invisible, about the money. I'm sorry I didn't see it before. I'm sorry I was part of it. I don't know if you can ever forgive me, but I wanted you to know I'm trying to understand. Natalie. I read it 3 times, felt the complicated emotions, grief for all the years lost, hope for what might be possible, caution born from experience. I didn't respond immediately. I sat with it. Let myself feel without needing to fix or solve or accommodate. Eventually, I wrote back, "Thank you for this. I appreciate you working to understand. When you're ready to talk, I'm here. But I'm also building a life that doesn't require your validation. I hope you're building one that doesn't require mine. Maybe someday we can meet as equals, as two women who had different experiences in the same family. Until then, I wish you healing." Elena. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was a door left open without sacrificing my boundaries to walk through it. That afternoon, sitting in my garden, Daniel's dog Cooper sprawled in the grass, I thought about the title people had given my story. I was not allowed at the wedding until my gift shocked everyone. But that wasn't quite right. Then the real story wasn't about the wedding or the shock, or even about them finally seeing me. The real story was about me finally seeing myself. For 35 years, I'd sought external validation. If I achieved enough, they'd value me. If I gave enough, they'd appreciate me. If I proved myself enough, they'd see my worth. But validation doesn't work that way. You can't earn unconditional love through conditions. You can't make people see your value if they've decided you're only valuable when you're useful. The real gift, the one that shocked everyone, including me, wasn't the money I'd given or the speech I'd made. It was the dignity I finally gave myself. The permission to be seen, to be valued, to matter. That gift? Nobody could take it away, because I'd finally given it to myself. And that felt like coming home after 35 years of being lost. I looked at my condo, my work, my chosen family, my peaceful life. I thought about the thousands of people who'd reached out saying my story helped them find their own courage. I thought about Sophie, the young woman who'd avoided years of exploitation because I'd spoken up. About Mira, learning to set boundaries before decades passed. About all the invisible daughters and sons and siblings and caregivers who saw themselves in my story and chose differently. My family might never understand what they did. They might never apologize or acknowledge or change. And I'd made peace with that, because I no longer needed them to validate my worth for me to know it was real. I was the main character of my own story now, not a supporting role, not an ATM, not the invisible daughter, just Elena, 36 years old, designer, speaker, friend, partner. A woman who'd learned the hardest way possible that choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. And I'd finally chosen to survive. On my own terms, in my own space, with my own voice, visible at last.